Here's an interesting thing. You may recall in the last random stuff upload, I mentioned that the infinite basil conveyor had become the finite basil conveyor because it looked like the whole process had come to an end. And one of the basil stalks that I was rooting in water had produced flowers, and no roots were forming on the rest of the plants. However, I removed that stalk from the pot and added fresh water, and look what's happened. We've now got roots forming. Now, this could just be coincidence. It could just be that these took a bit longer than usual to form, and they were going to do it anyway. But it is actually possible that maybe what was happening here was hormones from those flowers were suppressing root formation in the rest of the cuttings in this pot. It's possible, I don't know. Regardless, it looks like the infinite basil conveyor is back on track, although it looks like it's going to go slower. So I'm going to let these root for a couple more days. We'll pot them up, and I'm going to see if I can keep this going through the winter. It looks like maybe it will, but at a reduced rate. So just a few short days later, have a look at this. Look at all those roots. So after we took the flowering stem out of this pot, what we've got is cuttings with quite a healthy root system on them. Could be coincidence, but I tend to think that there might have been some suppression going on there. And I think it's testable as well. So I think in future, what we'll do, in some future iteration of this infinite basil project, I'm going to do 2 pots of cuttings, one as a control with just cuttings, one with a flowering stem in there, and we'll see what happens with rooting. I think we're going to find that the one with flowers is resistant to rooting. And I think that's probably logical because plants communicate with themselves, basically, using hormones. Different parts of the plant communicate with other different parts of the plant via hormones, saying, no, don't do anything else, we're making flowers. So it's possible that that's what happened here. I'm going to get this little water in, but infinite basil is back on the menu. So this is the older plant, so this is the one that's at the end of its cycle, and I can still use pieces and leaves off of here in the kitchen, but it's getting a little bit leggy, a little bit wiry. So what I'm going to do now is start the next cycle, which means just taking some cuttings off of this plant. And the cuttings need the leaves stripped off the bottom just to help them, well, just so those leaves don't rot in the water when I poke them through the foil. So those leaves I'm pulling off. I don't want to pull them all off because it needs something to keep it alive. But those leaves I'm pulling off, I can use them in cooking today. I think my problem with the basil that went to seed is I picked some really woody stems and tried to root them, and they didn't. It wasn't going to root because it was busy trying to make flowers. So I will choose something a bit more soft and sappy from nearer the bottom. Okay, and that just goes now on the windowsill, and we've got cuttings rooting in water, rooted cuttings growing in compost, and the mature plant that I can harvest. So just wandering around doing a bit of potential foraging. It's too dry this year. The basket is completely empty, but just stumbled across this, which I think is really interesting. And this is a parasitic fungus that lives on another fungus. So what we've got here is earth balls, common earth ball, being parasitized by a Boletus species. I think it might be Boletus parasiticus, and I don't think it's edible, so I won't be picking it. But there we go, there's one that's been kicked over. So definitely a bolete. There's another one there. But yeah, growing on common earth balls. How about that? There's one there that's surrounded by the mushrooms that are parasitizing it, and also there. So there we go. And what's also interesting here is the parasitic bolete has also got a mold growing on it. So that's a fungus growing on a fungus growing on a fungus. How about that? I don't know if it is just the child in me, but there is something I find particularly joyous about using a powerful and focused beam torch in the dark when it's slightly foggy.
I don't think it's anything to do with the fact that it can be focused into a kind of lightsaber type of beam. I think it's just more about the fact that it kind of resembles the way you see torches or lights depicted in cartoons. But also it's kind of interesting to see that when fog is illuminated like this, you can see the individual particles.
I've got the rest of these dried vegetables, mostly dried carrot, but a few bits of dried butternut squash in there. This is the kind of losers from the veggie jerky video. I'm going to use that up today. I'm going to make a kind of spicy lentil soup, and this is going to provide some of the flavour and seasoning. So we've just got some red split lentils, the last few sticks from a bunch of celery, a couple of onions, a few cloves of garlic, thyme, savoury, some bay leaves, ground cumin and sage. Celery, I've just given it a little wash, and we'll just give a trim at that end. Those bits can go in the stock pot, and then at the other end, well, things like that. Those celery leaves are quite edible. It's only on the bigger stems that they tend to be a bit tough. So I'm going to trim off those bits, and again, in the stock pot. These leaves, perfectly edible, I'm going to keep them. So if you don't think you like celery, but you do like cooked vegetables in general, you should probably try cooking with celery. It does transform it completely, and it goes, if you think celery's a boring, watery, bitter vegetable, maybe try cooking with it. I think it transforms it completely, and I think it's a different vegetable once it's cooked. So celery and onions I'm just going to lightly fry in here, not a metal spatula. And once that's coming along, I'll put the garlic in. So this thing about washing lentils, this is a different kind of lentils to the ones I did the washing experiment with last time. These are red split lentils, and again, I've never had a problem with these. I've never really found anything in there. Oh look, there's a tiny little speck of something. Never really found anything in there that I would worry about eating. Some people say they find stones in these, or foreign bodies. I mean, there's a little seed that's not a lentil. Tiny little grass seed there, I suppose. Yeah, another one there. There are a few seeds in there that aren't lentils, but I think they're just other grains. I think that's where it's been in a sorting facility with some other things. That's a little grain of, that's like a little grain of wheat or something. And I think these are just where this has been handled in a facility that's sorting a variety of different products, and probably the odd grain of the wrong species ends up in there. Anyway, we're going to wash these and see what comes off of them. So just like before, I've got some water on them. We'll give them a little swish round. And then we'll see what the water looks like at the end. I mean, I can see it's going to be cloudy. Okay, let's give that a strain and see what that water looks like. I mean, you can see that there's something happening there. So we'll strain that and reserve the water and see what we got. I mean, one thing with washing them, it is a fiddly job. They're stuck to the bowl, they're stuck to everything. That's one of the reasons I don't generally wash lentils. This is just a messy process, and it's wasting lentils. Okay, so there's the water that came off the lentils, and doesn't that look awful? Except I don't think that's dirt. I think that's just lentil dust in suspension in water. I don't think there's any sand in there. Let's see if I give it a little shimmy that way and then gently pull it back. There are some little grains down there. I think they're just broken bits of lentil, and I think that this here is just starch and dust from the lentils themselves. I'm not actually concerned about that at all. I'm going to leave that to settle and we'll see what happens. But basically, I think that's just lentil milk. Meanwhile, all these bits of dried vegetables, I'm going to chop into small dice. Not very neatly. I'm not going to try and line them up or anything like that. I'm just going to run the knife through them both ways. They are quite tough to chop, so I'm having to lean on the board a fair old bit here. But they do cut up. And then that's going to go straight into the slow cooker like that, along with the lentils, and that will hydrate in the liquid we're adding. And I'm going to use all of these in here. The reason I'm picking them out is because these little granules at the bottom, which is just the coating that's fallen off, mostly chili flakes, that's going to go in there as well. So as I said in the Plant Jerky 2 video, I wouldn't dry carrots and butternut squash specifically to use like this, but since I have them as a result of that experiment, I am going to use them. So in here we've got those dried vegetable pieces, the lentils, which are quite a faff to handle now because they're wet, and they're stuck all over the inside of the strainer. So I'm going to say, if you need to wash lentils where you live, then don't let me stop you. I don't think I need to, and I'm not probably going to do that in future. So you do you, I'll do me. And then in here we're going to have a teaspoonful of dried sage, or thereabouts, kind of just, yeah, about a teaspoonful. Half a teaspoonful of ground cumin. Now a little bit more, probably about a level teaspoonful in total. Bay leaves, winter savoury, some little leaves of thyme. I might put some of the infinite basil in here when it's nearer cooked. Okay, and then just the vegetables and some liquid. So I've got some tiny little cloves of garlic here, and it's really just an excuse to use up the small cloves out of the bulb. But I thought a little bit of ginger might go in here as well. So I've got a tiny piece of root ginger here. It's a tiny little oddment actually. It's almost impossible to peel, it's so small. But I'm just going to grate a little bit of that on there as well. I think we'll try ginger with the lentils. I think that's going to work. Nearly grated my finger there, but managed to avoid it at the last minute. Celery and onions are softened now, so in with that garlic and ginger. Okay, hot water, just really to cover the lentils and give it some liquid to absorb into them. I reckon that's probably about enough. I nearly forgot one of these little Maggi Star seasoning cubes. So that's just going to get squished in there. Hopefully, I think you can squeeze these and the packet comes undone. Oh, well, something like that. So we'll just crumble that in. Not a big pot of food we're making here. And we can always add salt later when it's cooked. That's going to cook for, I don't know, 4 to 6 hours. So after we've let this lentil water sit for about an hour, what we've got is starch. I mean, there are a few specks of dark stuff in there, but what that is at the bottom there is starch. It is really just powdered lentils. I'm going to say there's a few little specks of maybe dirt in there, a few little specks of maybe other plant material. It's not something I'm going to worry myself about. But if you need to wash lentils where you live, then don't let me stop you. Okay, it's a bit too late to record this last night because it was dark and artificial lighting didn't make this look very appetizing. However, daylight doesn't really help. Admittedly, that's a rather unappetizing looking mush. There's 2 boxes of it, one of those will go in the freezer. But I'm going to blend that, I think, and make that into a soup for my lunch today. So I did have a taste last night when it was warm, and the taste is absolutely superb. The seasoning level is just perfect. That one little stock cube plus the salt that was on the vegetable jerky was just the right level of seasoning, and the spice too. So the chili that came in with the jerky, and then that little bit of cumin and ginger, those 3 things actually, chili, cumin and ginger, the 3 of them together, absolutely superb combination. I'm just going to add a bit of water to that to help that blend. Right. Okay, so now we've got a nice smooth spicy lentil soup. I'm just going to get that in a pan and we'll warm it through. Okay, and so here we are, nice piping hot spicy lentil soup, really nice and thick and hearty. And just because thumbnails are a thing, a little garnish of infinite basil. So what does it taste like? It's really nice actually, and blending it obviously has broken up those chili seeds and those spices even more and distributed the flavour more evenly, so it's just got a really nice warming spiciness to it. And what I like to do with a spicy soup like this is just break up some crackers and have them kind of almost like croutons in the top, and as they hydrate in that soup, some of them will go a bit kind of doughy, a bit sort of soft, but some of them will stay crisp, and it just provides an extra sort of texture and flavours. That's a really nice soup. So obviously I didn't need those dehydrated carrots and butternut squash to make this soup. Could have just put those in as fresh ingredients and all the spices that went with them. But it was just a good way of making sure the results of that experiment didn't go to waste. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure I'm not the first person to discover this, but the combination of chilli, ginger, cumin and lentils is really, really good. It is too spicy for doggos. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.